It was big news when a giant cruise ship capsized at sea. 10 years later, it was completely abandoned and still lying on the underwater rocks where it was stranded. Two young marine divers, Mike and Jeff, decided to get a look inside. But they never expected to find what they found inside. Because when Jeff and Mike entered the cruise ship, they suddenly heard a loud scream in the distance. Jeff quickly picked the crowbar up and ran back to the door. He leaned back, knowing he only had one shot at getting this lock open, and slammed the crowbar down onto the lock. A loud bang thundered through the ship. The lock fell to the ground, and Mike quickly flung the door open. They could not believe what they saw inside. Now the screaming suddenly made so much sense to them. They knew they had to call the police immediately. But what did the divers find on the cruise ship? Where did the strange screaming come from? And why did the police need to get involved? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Jeff and Mike knew that nobody was allowed near the half-sunken cruise ship, but they did not care. From the moment they saw it, they wanted to get on it to check it out. And so the young divers set out in the early morning when nobody was going to stop them. The ship didn't look very sturdy, and who knows what they would find inside. It could be very dangerous, and if there were something happen to one of them, there was no way they would get back to shore in time. But Jeff didn't listen. He had already started looking for a way inside. As the ship tilted, part of the upper deck lay in the water, allowing them to climb aboard. Jeff secured their boat and looked at Mike, who hesitated but followed him inside. The atmosphere was eerie, silent except for the creaking metal and lapping water. "Wait up!" Mike called as Jeff moved ahead. They explored rooms filled with dust, cobwebs, and signs of abandonment. In the cabins, unmade beds and scattered belongings suggested a hurried departure. A strange noise echoed through the halls. "Did you hear that?" Mike whispered, but Jeff shrugged it off. Determined to investigate, they descended into the ship's lower levels using their phone flashlights. The noise grew louder, a muffled scream. In the mechanical section, they waded through shallow water, following the sound. Reaching a dead end, Mike spotted a hidden handle. Jeff pulled, but the door wouldn't budge. Pressing their ears against it, they confirmed the sound came from inside. Suddenly, another boat approached. Voices, angry men. Panic set in. As they hurried back, footsteps thundered down the stairs. They quickly hid behind the stairwell, holding their breath as three men walked toward the locked door. When the men opened it, the scream became clearer. Mike glimpsed inside. Was that a woman? "We have to get out of here," he whispered. Jeff, alarmed, pressed for answers. "That scream! We have to help her!" They were outnumbered, and the men were stronger. Calling the police, they knew backup would take time. Summoning courage, they edged closer to the door, eavesdropping. "Someone's on this ship," one man said. "She couldn't have broken the lock herself." Another added, "Their boat is still docked. They're here." Mike and Jeff ducked under the stairs as one man exited the room and started searching the ship. Mike noticed a glimpse of a gun tucked away in the man's belt and swallowed at the thought of standing face to face with it. They listened as the man's footsteps slowly faded away. "Shit, shit, shit," Mike whispered, panicked. "Chill, Mike," Jeff answered. "I need you to stay alert and stop freaking out." Mike sighed as he knew Jeff was right. His heart was pounding in his chest, and he couldn't wait for the police to arrive. "All right," Jeff said quietly. "I have a plan. We have to lure that man out of the room and, at the same time, distract the man upstairs searching for us," Jeff said. "But how can we do that? We're only with the two of us," Mike answered. "Just follow my lead." It looked like Jeff was very confident in his plan, but Mike wasn't so sure yet. Jeff looked around him in the dark. Mike was confused about what he was searching for, but soon realized when Jeff held up a big rock. Mike was about to say something, but Jeff held his finger to his lips and threw the rock at the stairs. A loud bang echoed through the ship. A loud bang. Mike's eyes widened, and Jeff hurried back into the dark. The man left behind in the room rushed outside and ran straight to the stairs. "Derek!" he shouted. "I've got them!" The man ran up the stairs, and Jeff and Mike waited until the sound of his footsteps faded away. When they could only hear the muffled sounds of footsteps, Mike and Jeff emerged from the dark and ran to the room. Jeff pulled the heavy door open and got inside, but just as Mike was about to get in, he heard the men returning downstairs. Mike froze, not knowing what to do. He eventually hid behind something, just in time for the men to return. "I really thought I had them, Derek," one man said. "I told you to stay inside the room with her, dumbass," Derek answered. "I'm locking you inside with her, and when I've found the intruders, I'll come back for you." I hope Jeff was able to hide, Mike thought. Derek grabbed a new lock from his pocket and locked his companion inside the room. He then clipped the keys to his belt and went back upstairs. Mike waited for a few minutes, unsure of what to do next, when suddenly a loud noise came from the room. It sounded like someone was rearranging the room, but why? Suddenly, Mike realized what was going on. They were fighting! Mike quickly put his ear to the door and listened. Jeff and the man were definitely fighting, and he could hear a woman screaming too, but it sounded like she had something inside her mouth. Mike's body filled with adrenaline. All he could think about was saving his dear friend. Without thinking, he ran upstairs and began shouting for Derek. "Derek, where are you, pal?" Heavy footsteps ran his way, and before Mike knew it, he stood face to face with Derek, who looked very, very angry. Mike said, now a bit less confident. Derek said nothing, but slowly walked toward Mike with his hand by his gun. "So," Derek said eventually, "you are the one sneaking around this ship? You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, you know." Derek was very intimidating, and Mike almost peed his pants. But Mike also knew the only way to get Jeff out of that room was with the keys hanging from Derek's belt. Mike had no idea how he had done it. Everything moved so fast that he handled it without thinking. But he suddenly had the keys in his hands, and Derek lay knocked out on the ground. Mike had no time to spare, so he quickly ran downstairs and unlocked the door. He expected to find Jeff standing triumphantly over the other man's knocked-out body, but he couldn't be more wrong. As he swung open the door, he was greeted by the other man's angry face. This was bad. Mike stood in the doorway with confidence. "Hi there," he said calmly. "Your partner Derek is upstairs knocked out." But the man stayed unfazed. He had a dangerous look on his face, but Mike didn't seem to care. He was about to swing at Mike when the man suddenly fell to the ground. As the man fell, he revealed Jeff standing behind him, with the crowbar in his hands. He had gotten up from the ground as the man stood facing Mike, and without his knowledge, he had smacked him on the head. Both men were now knocked out, but they still had to hurry. They could wake up any minute. Mike and Jeff hurried to the woman. She was forcefully bound to a chair with duct tape covering her mouth. Jeff carefully pulled the duct tape from her face, and she immediately cried out, "Please, hurry! Get me out of here!" Mike untied her hands, and Jeff untied her legs. They could hear the police sirens from a distance. They helped the woman up, as she was too weak to stand on her own. And together, They walked back to the boats. They put the woman in their own boat, and Jeff grabbed some leftover rope to bind the men together. The police finally arrived, and they were shocked to see what they were called to. They never expected to see this. They quickly hurried inside and arrested the two men. They got the woman to safety, and McKee and Jeff also had to come with them to the police station. Jeff and Mike were interrogated at the station, and they had to explain everything that had happened. They weren't supposed to be on the ship in the first place, so they were worried the police would arrest them for it, but instead, the police reacted very differently than they expected. Instead of arresting Jeff and Mike, they reward them for their bravery. It turned out that the woman they saved wasn't like any ordinary woman. She was the governor's daughter, and she had been held hostage for a few days now. The man had demanded money, but suddenly broke contact. If it weren't for Jeff and Mike, the woman would probably be dead right now. The governor praised the young men for saving his daughter and rewarded them with a big check. Jeff and Mike were still shaken up by what had happened. They couldn't believe this was real life. Jeff and Mike received a check from the governor so big, they decided to travel the world for a while. The scary ordeal scarred the men, but it didn't stop them from going on more adventures. They lived the rest of their lives like there was no tomorrow and enjoyed every minute of it.